All right. So with free agency kind of going all crazy and, honestly, I feel like this offseason it's just a little wild. So I want to try something a little differently. We're getting so many repetitive stories again and again and again. And so I want to try something a little different. I've been receiving a ton of comments that I think are just absolutely insane. And a lot of them right now are with regards to the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe because they won the Super Bowl. I don't really know. But I've always wanted to address comments more directly in clips like this. First, I was thinking maybe I'll just take like one comment, unpack it, and do the whole thing. But I just got an influx of just awful comments, absolutely outrageous comments, and so I was like, okay, let's just do this. Let's just do a bunch of them, see how this goes, and then we can go from there. So let's take a look. Comment number one. Low-key, the Eagles kind of got lucky that the Lions got derailed by injuries because the Lions looked unstoppable until it piled up on them. I'm a Rams fan and seeing those two teams being the only NFC teams to beat the Eagles when healthy. So now they got lucky, right? They got lucky because of that Lions team. I just... that Lions offense was also still really healthy. They were pretty much all there, and yet they looked shell-shocked against a not-so-good Commanders defense. The defense was average. We know what the Eagles did. They hung 55 points on them. And don't tell me that it was just because of those turnovers. That's the other brain dead comment that I see, is that the Commanders were lucky, or the Commanders gave the game away. Now, I actually made a separate video for that. That's going to be posting on the weekend because that's a whole nother separate breakdown. So I'm not going to address that right now. I'm going to stick with just, this comment right here. But this idea that the Eagles got lucky, that the Lions got derailed by injuries, that the Lions would have been unstoppable compared to what the Eagles, who the Eagles are, is kind of insane. It really, really is when you really think about it, considering what the Eagles were able to do, especially against elite defenses. Because all the injuries, the vast majority of the injuries were all on the defense for the Lions. Okay? They all still had their main key pieces on offense. And yet the Eagles dismantled, better defenses than what the Lions had when they were healthy, and yet the Eagles got lucky. That just doesn't make sense. The Eagles' defense is so great, so elite, so special, that one of the best offenses out there, who was the Baltimore Ravens, the Eagles shut down. Lamar Jackson, who was at a historic pace. Derrick Henry, who in any other year would have been the best running back if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley, they shut down. And so you want to go ahead and say that the Eagles were lucky? What? The Eagles had to face the Commanders, who Jane Daniels had the best rookie season in the, in the history of the NFL. So much so that people said that the Commanders were going to beat the Eagles. Come on, man. What is that? They got lucky. Unbelievable. Then we got, I want to save that one for later. First one, the Rams were a mess with players coming off of injury. That was the first game, I suppose, to talk about. And the O-line was confused. The second game was a different story. If not for those big runs from Barkley and Jalen, even with the turnovers, the Rams would have destroyed them. Okay. So let's just take away all the big plays away from the Philadelphia Eagles, and then the Rams would have won. Like, what? I don't even understand. I don't even understand that comment. I really don't. If not for those big runs from Barkley and Jalen, even with the turnovers, the Rams would have destroyed them. So we're supposed to just take away all the big plays from the Philadelphia. Like, do you understand how insane? Okay, so then take away all the big throws from Matthew Stafford. Like, I don't even understand. And it's one thing if the Philadelphia Eagles weren't known for having big run plays. like if those were flukes, if those were random occurrences. But it was literally a massive part of the Philadelphia Eagles team. So I don't understand. It's not like it was, that it was some random scrub off the street. They had a practice squad, John Smith be their running back, and he just went off for 250 yards and unleashed two epic runs that nobody ever saw coming. Then I could say, yeah, that was kind of a crazy situation. I could understand it. But it was Saquon Barkley who was crushing teams week after week after week after week, has the record for the most rushing yards in the history of the NFL when, combining playoffs and regular season. And it would have been just regular season as well if he didn't sit. So, what are we talking about here? He had massive runs against every single team. So now you want to take away the thing that he does great? What? What? How does that even make sense? Oh my gosh. I can't fathom a comment like that. Let's take away Jalen Carter's sack too. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Then we have this one. Let me make this one bigger, because this one's a doozy. We're even going to cover myself just to read this guy. Again, you're making this one-sided perspective. The weather clearly was a factor on both teams. Let me stop you right there. The weather benefited the Rams more and hurt the Eagles more. When you have slippery conditions like that, like a slippery field, it neutralizes the O-line and benefits the team that is going to be passing more, which is who Stafford and the Rams are. That's what makes them better offensively. Tom Brady himself has talked about this. They even kind of mentioned this on the broadcast because you could see how the defense is at a disadvantage when covering receivers because you have to react to what the other player is doing. And when you're reacting, you're more likely to slip, so you have to be more conservative. So that benefits Stafford and the Rams. That's just a fact. Combine that with Jalen Hurts, who is a smaller quarterback, where now you're talking about a lot of snow and the visibility is going to be impaired for him. He is going to have more impaired visibility than, say, a Matthew Stafford. It's just a different set of strengths and weaknesses. And again, it all is all very individual. This isn't necessarily just like a catch-all thing necessarily. So it's just, it all depends on what makes an individual team special. Where can some of the benefit come? If you were talking about on a strictly clean field with no weather conditions that had no potential to neutralize one benefit or weakness here or whatever it is, the Eagles were clearly the better team because their O-line would have protected better against that pass rush. Jalen Hurts would have been able to see the ball better, and the Eagles' defense would have been able to cover the receivers better, as we've seen them do throughout the whole year. Okay? So, and even so, with the messy conditions, obviously both teams were giving up a lot of sacks in that regard. But what makes the Eagles special was not necessarily their ability to, sack the quarterback. I think they were 16th in sacks or whatnot. So this was the weather absolutely was more of an advantage for the Rams. However, as I stated before, the weather was the reason why the Rams turned the ball over 2 to 3 times. No, it's not. It was the Eagles' defense. It was that's what it was. Huh? I'm confused by this. This was because of the weather, because of the strip sack that they punched right out, and that the Eagles were able to recover. That was because of the weather? That's weird. And now Jalen Carter slugging the ball out, literally just boom. That's the weather? What? If these were slip and falls and the ball just dropping out, sure, we could blame the weather. But, the weather was the reason why the Rams turned the ball over. That isn't, that I don't understand. I don't understand. You know, the weather actually stopped the Eagles from getting like 2 or 3 more interceptions off of Stafford, actually. And also, why weren't the Eagles? Why didn't the Eagles do this though? Then, why you know, if the weather was affecting both teams like this, well then why didn't the Eagles start having slip and slides like this? I don't understand. Doesn't really make sense. You know, Hurts in no way. This is my favorite comment. Hurts in no way was the decisive factor as to why the Eagles won. Healthy or not, why? Because the Rams defense got to him. Go back and look at the tape. In short, the weather caused the turnovers against the Rams. The Eagles took advantage of this, but more importantly, it was the ability to come back and almost win the game that takes second place here. First place goes to Barkley, who did his damage long before the Rams started turning the ball over. I've seen Hurt injured before in past games, but I've never seen him get sacked 7 times. Injured or not, games get decided by one play. This game was no exception. So right, Hurts the one who checked Barkley into that massive run that exploded the game. Hurts who then also had his own huge run. Hurts who then checked Saquon Barkley into his second huge touchdown run. Hurts who, you know, managed the weather to the best of his abilities. Obviously was struggling as well, struggling with visibility. Was injured, messed up his knee in the latter half of the game, and clearly was now lacking mobility. Clearly, I mean, he was the dude was shot up with something. If you see that interview post game, like you knew he was not all there. Like the dude was obviously in pain to the point where he was gonna have to he was originally wearing a brace in the beginning of the game, you know, before the game started against the Commanders. So I mean, his knee was twisted, man. I mean, I just it's funny to want to now also downplay what Jalen Hurts did in that game, and then to say, oh, this only came down to like one big play. So in short, the weather caused these turnovers, but then the weather affected both teams, but it benefited the Eagles more, but didn't hurt the Eagles at all. Like I'm struggling to really grasp that. I'm struggling to make sense of that. I just don't quite get it. Just don't quite get it. And we want to say that it all came down to just one play, but then like Saquon Barkley had 2 big runs. Jalen Hurts, big run. Jalen Carter punching out the ball. The 5th one, I forget who punched out the ball for who had the strip sack. I think it was Williams. I forget who it was. You know, that's 5 right there. Big plays. And then the Jalen Carter sack on the final drive against the Rams. That's 6 plays. Like this game came down to just one big play? Like, what are we saying here? What are we doing here? Do we know how to watch football games? I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. And then we got this beautiful game. Love was better than Hurts in the playoff game against the Packers. Jordan Love was better than Hurts in that playoff game. And it was because the Packers were missing their receivers, and that they were going up, you know, Jordan Love had to play a better defense. And so that Jordan Love was better. Jordan Love was all over the place in that game. I don't care who your receivers were. He did a terrible job managing that game. And Jalen Hurts went up against a great defense for the Packers, and when you actually watch that game, everybody was covered. The Packers did a great job of taking away all of the plays, all of these big, you know, these consistent big passing plays for Jalen Hurts. And what Jalen Hurts did was make the right decisions, unlike what Jordan Love did. Okay? Jordan Love had 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and was throwing the ball all over the place. Was not managing that game in any measurable way. Whereas the Eagles, for the most part, It wasn't until the end that they were able to kind of start to get things going on the run game. But the run game was hampered, and the passing game was hampered. And it's really funny because the same commenter said Jalen Hurts never even won a game without AJ Brown, which is just false. Just false. Beat the Saints. But AJ Brown had 1 catch for 10 yards. Okay? Jalen Hurts threw a touchdown pass to Dotson. So let's cut the nonsense here. Okay? Let's cut the nonsense. Jalen Hurts in that game was incredibly strategic, making crucial conversions with his legs and with his arm. So he was managing the game. It's not about just yards, passing yards and this, that. When you actually watch the game, watch how Jalen Hurts actually took care of the ball and played way more efficient when it mattered most. In the moments that mattered, he was able to do it. They simply were not. 4 turnovers. Just like that. 3 of them coming from Jordan Love. And it has nothing to do with having injured receivers. I always hate when people say that. Oh, so-and-so threw interceptions, but he doesn't have any good wide receivers. Okay. That's not what you think it means. I can understand why you're going to have a poor pass game. Why you're going to maybe have less touchdown passes. Et cetera, et cetera. But when you look at some of the passes that were thrown, they were bad throws or bad decisions, no matter who the wide receiver is. So I just what are you talking about? This was because of he didn't have a good enough receiver? What? That doesn't make sense. I mean, look at this. Huh? I mean, here's the other interception. He just never sees him. It's that simple. I don't care what the route was. I don't care about who was the receivers. He just simply does not see him. So yeah, man. It's crazy. People got some crazy takes, man. They got some crazy takes. What are you going to do? I don't even know. Honestly, there's just too many crazy takes like that people think hold a lot of truth to them, have a lot of validity to them, and the reality is just not. I mean, in summary, think about what people are saying. If the Philadelphia Eagles defense didn't do a good job playing defense, then they lose. If the Philadelphia Eagles don't have their playmakers on offense make plays, then they would have lost. The Philadelphia Eagles, who beat great teams, both great offenses and great defenses throughout the entire season, both regular and postseason, but yet they would have lost to other teams if things were different because those teams were good or great or better. Just makes my head hurt, man. Makes my head hurt. You're blaming the weather for why Jalen Carter was able to slug the ball out. What? You're saying that Jordan Love played better than Jalen Hurts because he had 60 more passing yards? Okay. I don't understand. I really, really don't. It's bonkers. It's wild. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Philadelphia Eagles? They just really continue to get lucky, I guess, throughout the season. Kudos to them, man. Riding just the good fortune. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.